My name is Robert. I'm an educational advisor who specialises in school evaluation and teacher training. As part of my last sort of full-time role, I oversaw the introduction or LMS or VLE into the school and evaluated its sort of pedagogical success. I'm also a regular team member for Council of International School visits or school evaluation visits. Although at the moment those visits are virtual, not actually physical. In today's discussion, we're looking at the quality of blended and online learning and trying to focus on ensuring that students get the best experience that they can. I'm not here as your sort of tech specialist, neither am I here as the sort of expert online teacher. I'm here very much with the hat of the evaluator, looking at it from a bigger picture and seeing what we can do to improve the experience for the students that we have. In today's discussion, we're going to look at a few different areas. We're going to briefly talk about the importance of an ICT audit, although many of you will already have done this. Then we'll spend a little bit longer discussing a definition of high quality teaching and learning, because I think maybe this is probably the core issue at the moment that is perhaps slightly forgotten in all the health and safety issues that we're having to undergo. We're going to look at the range of teaching strategies and on online and in blended learning context. Discuss meeting individual student needs, which is really sort of the key phrase when anyone evaluates a school. Are you meeting the individual needs of the students? And then finally, briefly discuss the importance of reflecting and self-evaluating what your schools are delivering. It's meant to be a discussion. I'm here really, hopefully with fresh eyes to help generate some discussion. I'm not here as the expert's going to tell you what to do. That's not really my role. Okay, let's just. This is not quite right. As you can see, not the online teacher.
Robert, glad you mentioned you are not a tech specialist. You know, you can.
I'm not a tech specialist. Yes, I hope I got that in. Thank you. Okay, here we go. So we'll start with a poll that Malavan is going to give you. So first of all, have you carried out an ICT audit in your school that included the physical resources in the school, the online resources that you may have paid for, and student access? Great, I thought that would be the answer, 100%. So this is more the discussion point. With that audit, did it change your school's approach? For example, many schools, I think, will have sets of laptops or sets of iPads that students use collectively. Clearly now there's actually a health and safety issue with that, as well as a practical issue. And has that changed? Have you now introduced a bring your own device sort of policy into school? So this is a question to you. Similarly, if you were using a learning management system before, did you evaluate that and have you changed it as a result of what's happened? Or have you looked at assessment tools? If more students are sending in their work on an online basis, are you using tools like Turnitin that sort of helps to stop plagiarism, for example? So that's a question out there. For those of you who don't want to speak, that's a question just to reflect upon. But is there anybody who would have anything that they'd like to contribute along this discussion? just, if you can use your hands up on Zoom, and I can see. Okay. So Kelsey, can you unmute? Oh, Kelsey, I'll unmute Kelsey.
Is it unmuted? Yeah, good morning.
Yes. Morning, Kelsey.
So, although we did do the ICT audit, because of the financial situation that everyone is going through, especially in schools right now, we're very tenuous about purchasing more things, and parents are also not really happy to send in devices. So we're managing with the physical resources that we have. But a part of the ICT audit that we did was the skills of the teachers, like required basic skills that they have to have, and then started doing training for them right away so that they would be able to build those skills. And the online resources, yeah, we purchased some of the iPrimary from Pearson and other publishers from last year, knowing that this might be a reality for a while. So we have invested in the online resources.
Do you find if in school, is it an issue that the students don't have their own device? Does that make it harder to sort of transition from in-school blended learning to at-home blended learning?
No, we haven't faced that, honestly. When they're in school, they're happy not to be on devices, to be honest. And it's funny how even the older girls are kind of like, oh, okay, you know, we just want to have a regular lesson. They don't. When they're at home, they're using their devices and their laptops and whatever, but when they're in school, they want that interaction with the person in front of them.
Thank you. Can I move to Andrea?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning.
I'm like head of the English department there in Romania, a private school in Bucharest, and we didn't really have problems because most students have their own computers and their own devices. And on top of that, what is nice, the state also provided, it's actually going to provide, I think, computers and devices for most teachers that have been online. So that's a good policy, because the students have, let's say, teachers don't have like very good computers. And I don't know if you know, but like internet, it's like the best in Europe here in Romania. So we are lucky to have that. Yeah. The only problem was with some teachers who were more reluctant to using technology, but we had also a Microsoft team coming over, and they try like to, they kind of taught us, instructed us like how to use Teams and so on and so forth. But currently we are using a very good platform. It's called Kinderpedia, and that's something, it's working with Zoom, and everybody's really happy about it. And it's very easy to use. It's like really user friendly.
Thank you. I'll just see if anyone else has got. Okay, thank you. I guess most schools will have done that very quickly, and if they haven't, if they didn't do it during lockdown, they would have done it now. But obviously, if the schools that haven't done that now, will be a bit of an issue. But we'll move on quickly to the next point, which I think is probably the most important point of the presentation, really. When I go on sort of school visits for Council of International Schools, or when I did go on visits with Council of International Schools, I would evaluate teaching and learning, mainly in primary, because I'm a primary specialist, but also throughout all phases of the school. And one of the things that all schools will have to have is a definition of high quality teaching and learning. So as well as having your school mission statement, your school mission, your vision, your values, you would have a definition of high quality teaching and learning, and hopefully that will be sort of embedded into everything that the staff do, and they will be living and breathing some of what's in your definition of high quality teaching and learning. Every school has their own unique definition because every school is a bit different. Everyone has their own context. I've just taken one from ESTYN, and ESTYN are the Welsh equivalent of Ofsted. So they're the school inspectorate in Wales, because in the United Kingdom, each country has its own different inspectorate. This particular definition of teaching and learning isn't meant to be the model that everyone should use. I just quite like it because it sort of takes out 12 sort of pedagogical areas that you'll often find in definitions of teaching and learning. So in front of you, you'll see the words in black. That comes directly from this definition of teaching and learning, from the visual actually in the top right-hand corner. And then the words in blue, I've just used slightly different language, and each of these is really a discussion point. It's something to reflect on, something to think about. I'm going to talk about a couple of them. I'm just going to talk about it and give my personal opinion. And then I'll sort of see if anyone else got something to add, either on the points that I've mentioned or perhaps on some of these other pedagogical areas that are in this definition. I'm just going to start with the bottom one, the bottom right. So, which encourages collaboration or social learning strategy. So most definitions of quality teaching and learning will have something like that. It might be just as simple as pair work, group work, collaborative, cooperative learning, strategies that encourage collaboration, maybe talk about social constructivism perhaps, or just social learning strategies. So most will have that social element, which is so important to learning. But it just strikes me that that's, at the moment, I don't know in schools at the moment how schools are dealing with social distancing in classes, and whether students are being separated very rigorously and looking at the teacher in front of them, or whether that's just for the cameras and then it's back to normal again. They're still working in their bubbles collaboratively, or I know in some schools that some students are at school and some students are online, so at the same time, so they're doing split sessions, and there are still some students who are working purely online. And this area of collaboration is a tricky one. If you're social distancing in class, it's very hard to do that. And if you're teaching like this, me giving a lecturette over Zoom, which I know that some teachers have felt they have to do, then again, you're sort of missing this very, very important part of high quality teaching and learning. There are, of course, many online tools to do this. And even if you were in a socially distanced class, it is possible to do this. But I'm just wondering if that is actually happening in classrooms at the moment. So that's just the first sort of point I was just ruminating about. And I'll just move on to the left a little bit, to the right at the bottom. So good teaching and learning encourages children and young people to take increasing responsibility for their learning. So the idea of student choice, you might have heard of, or student-led learning, again, that will be in a lot of definitions, and a lot of schools will prioritize that in various ways. And again, I think it's something probably in this environment that is particularly important, or when the students are at home. One of the reasons for student-led learning or student choice is obviously to motivate the students more intrinsically, and to have more choice in their learning. And again, I'm just wondering, in the lockdown, if that was possible, if that was integrated into the teaching and learning, and even now, is that part of the practice, or is that made particularly difficult because of the the situation that we're in. But again, it's a really vital element of high quality teaching and learning. Those two things, and I think perhaps the recent events put a bit of pressure on those two areas. But there are many other areas here that contribute to quality teaching and learning. If in simple terms, active learning, social learning, and applied learning, that'd be the three sort of areas which you would find in some form in these definitions, and they also are the key to good quality learning face to face, and also in a blended environment as well. But I'm wondering what challenges you have faced in some of these areas. You know, have your teachers been able to produce lessons with lots of active learning strategies online, or in a sort of social distance way in class? What sort of formative assessment strategies were being used? Did your school already have the idea of blended learning in its teaching and learning statement? Was it already part of the culture of the school? And probably, yeah, and then the one towards the bottom there, pastoral care. How successful was your pastoral care when students were at home? Was there any way to facilitate that? Because a lot of pastoral care takes place actually within a classroom setting. So that's just my sort of quick sort of points about some of the most important elements there. Again, I'm wondering if you would like to contribute to one of these areas and maybe talk about some of the challenges that you've had, or some of the successes that you've had to get over some of these pedagogical issues. I'll just see again if I can. So again, could you raise your hand if you, so we have so Dr. Mariam Sani. Dr. Sani, do you have your hand raised? Do you want to?
Okay.
Oh, sorry. You've...
Okay. Right.
Sorry, but you're on. Sorry, I think you're okay, now you're unmuted.
Right. Okay, great. Okay, thank you so much, Robert. The school that I was consulting for, like most schools, as I said, they did the audit and so on, the IT audit. The initial challenge was not because of being online, because they were used to blended learning, but I think it was because it was totally online, and this was a challenge. You know, not all students were willing to, you know, participate when they're online, even without a video camera. You know, they just felt it singled them out too much. Whereas in the classroom environment, as we know, you know, some students are more active than others, and the ones who tend to, you know, sort of hide behind the others and have to be called on, they were even less willing to participate when it was online. And so this was a major challenge. Fortunately, a social worker was involved with daily lessons, not in the lessons, but collaborating with teachers. And so she was able to then, after a class or at the end of the day, contact a parent and then have a session with students who are in that kind of situation, so that they could see how they could best assist them. So, for example, students who really were adamant that they didn't want to speak on the, you know, during a session, they were allowed to just use the chat. They were fine chatting with each other, you know, separately, but they just didn't want their voices to be heard in case they made a mistake. And I think that's what it was. It was a fear that everybody would hear if they made a mistake, even though they tried to make it a risk-free environment. So, you know, it's more about participating than getting answers right. But it definitely posed a problem socially for many of the students. And actually, they are online, totally online now. I'm in Saudi Arabia, and the students are totally online again. So, you know, it is challenging.
Thank you. Even as a teacher, it's that sort of quiet middle is always the most challenging to teach. But yes, in the online world, it's very easy to hide. Thank you very much for
Yes.
that. Let's see if anyone else got their hand. Would anyone else like to make a point about some other area of? So, is it Ms. Sharma, Madhu Sharma?
Yes, yes. My name is Madhu Sharma, and we in India faced a lot of challenges to take to. I mean, there was because it's a huge country with a lot of variation. There were exclusive private schools which took to it blended learning more easily, and we still have online classes only because our schools haven't reopened as yet. And there were issues of discipline and, you know, switching off the video and making an entry and then switching off the video and, you know, all sorts of things. But the teachers took to it very quickly. And but there is a variation because, sorry, in the government schools or the less privileged private schools, they don't have, there's a lot of sale of laptops have gone up. Parents are sharing their laptops with children, and the parents are at home. So there are a lot of issues. Internet issues are also there, you know, because our bandwidth is not always the best. We have these challenges, but the teachers took to it overnight, something which they were asked time and again to get into, but they were reluctant because they were used to a traditional mode of teaching. But overnight, that transformation came about. That's what I wanted to share.
Thank you. And Andrea?
Hello again. So in Romania, what we realized was that immediately when we went online, students were not being autonomous and independent when it came to learning, because they were like used to be in the class and always like listening to the teacher and to the teacher's instructions. So when they're supposed to do something with very little instruction or less instructions like than before, they couldn't actually perform. And another problem was like, of course, we had to disuse at least during the first 2 weeks, the chat, and we muted them all until they realized that we are actually having classes online, even because we know that what they considered online until March was like just having fun. So these were the two issues, not being independent. And we had to work a lot on that. I think it took us like 2 weeks to just like teach them how to learn for themselves and on their own.
I'm just, thank you. I'm just wondering, and going back to the definition, if how many of your schools have gone back to their definition of quality teaching and learning and use that to check what's happening is high quality. It's probably, I guess there are so many sort of health and safety and technical issues that may not have been the case, but that's just a point. Any school should go back to their definition of quality teaching and learning and check if that is actually the same face-to-face and online, and if it's not, to think of strategies to address that. And certainly schools that will be evaluated, that's what the evaluation team will look at. We'll certainly look at if that's been successful. We'll just move on now again, just
If I could just, I would like to just say that, you know, addressing the idea that you just brought up about addressing what good quality learning looks like under these new circumstances. And I think in my school, that's one of the main problems, that we have not really looked at that as a whole and set our own definition of it. So teachers are putting out a lot of digital lessons, doing online live lessons, but what is the quality of it? What is the impact on the students? It's not, you can't just do, in my own opinion, like you really need to make sure that what you're putting out there is meeting the needs of the students in a way, because in the classroom, there's a lot of give and take. You know, you offer the kids information, you ask them to practice it or do an activity related to it, and you can observe and see how much they've gathered. Whereas for us, we're mostly doing like digital lessons, not really even live for the kindergarten. So there's no way for us to immediately measure the impact of what we're teaching. So I do think it's critical at this point for us to really set a definition of what works and how we know when it works, and how much we need to adjust our thinking, not just proceed as if the kids are in front of us. So I really appreciate the framework idea and the idea that we need to go back and really look at this. And then just addressing the pastoral care, one of the other ladies had mentioned the guidance counselor, the social worker being involved. We also had her involved, especially for kids that maybe their parents were in quarantine away from them. So we had contact with the children, and even the teachers were in contact with them on the phone. And we also set up a hotline in the school. So we had 6 different mobile numbers that parents could reach specified staff members at any time if there was an emergency or if they had any problems. So that connection really, really built good feelings between us and the parents, because they felt like we're supporting them and willing to try to help them through because a lot of people were going through big, big challenges, especially, you know, as the numbers were so high here in Qatar last year. But alhamdulillah, things are getting better now, but still parents are struggling. So building that communication, I thought, was a big part of pastoral care.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
As I said, I do think the reason I'm spending so long on this definition of teaching learning is so important. Just from what I've been observing, yes, looking at a job in the Times for a new virtual school. There's quite a few new virtual schools appearing at the moment, and this job, in the description for the teacher, what it said, some of the lessons that you prepare will be active, and then some of the lessons the children will just watch and learn, and that was actually in the advertisement. So as far as I know, just children watching and learning, that doesn't really happen in my experience. You need to have strong pedagogy. So and I just wonder if that's been slightly missed at the moment, and if schools go back to their quality their definition of high quality teaching and learning, that will help them. If they haven't got one, it's really important to have one, and that definition should be able to cope with both face-to-face and online, because the elements are interchangeable, they're the same really. Dr. Sani, did you want to add something?
Yeah, in your framework, I'm just moving on a little bit to assessment, because a lot of the students I was dealing with at schools, that we were looking at the middle and high school. So formative assessment was only a small part of what they did, and quite a lot of it was summative assessment. And I think that with the online learning, one of the things that I have questioned the schools about is not just getting the job done. It's kind of like they want to finish the curriculum, they want to finish the objectives, and then, you know, the pedagogical practices are reduced. You know, they're not just giving a video and saying watch, But the idea, for example, of a flipped classroom has suddenly become so popular without people really understanding what a flipped classroom is. And so that is yet another challenge that I've seen a lot. Because they're online, you think, okay, they can watch a video and tomorrow we can discuss it. But the number of students that are actually watching and able to participate in that is minimal. It's based on the ones who really want to do that anyway, not actually actively getting all the students to do that. I just wanted to include that.
I think that is that idea of formative assessment or responsive teaching. You know, it isn't the curriculum that should lead. It's the class that leads the curriculum, not the other way around. You know, and if you even face to face, if your staff haven't got lots of formative assessment strategies or responsive teaching strategies, they won't know how to gauge the level that they're pitching at, and if that has been affected particularly by lockdown and they're just running through the curriculum, again, that's another huge sort of barrier to learning that's being built up, I guess. Again,
Absolutely.
which goes back to the definition of high quality teaching and learning. If you know, teachers just need to be reminded of that, or given help looking at different strategies that they can use. And just an aside from that, if as a literacy specialist as well, if schools have, if students are typing their assignments only now, if they're not handwriting them, that can be a bit of a problem, because the process of writing is completely different when you're typing to when you're writing by hand. And if you're as old as me and you didn't have a computer when you're younger and you learnt to plan every part of your discursive essay, and then you plan every part of your paragraph and then wrote it in one go, then you can then convert to using a word process, you know, to using word processing software and changing and chopping whatever you're doing. If you do it the other way around, if you're relying on word processing, and then you come to an exam, a final exam, which is handwritten, that's going to be a problem, because you won't have developed those skills anymore. But and again, it's something I've seen personally quite a lot in my career.
Yes.
We'll just move on though, but thank you for your discussion points. Probably quite briefly about learning management systems, because I imagine that will have been the one of the first things that schools looked at during lockdown was, do they have a learning management system? Personally, I'm just familiar with two. Canvas I've used, which is a lot of universities use, and it's got quite high functionality. Also, the free system, Google Classroom, a lot of schools use that because it's free. It's not perfect. It has a few, you know, but it's free. It's better than nothing. But at the moment, there are lots of new learning management systems appearing at the market. I worked in the summer with a new company called Aula, whose learning management system, unfortunately, they're just using for universities at the moment. But it's much more of a mix between a learning management system and a sort of social media platform. It's very, 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 very different thing, and I think we'll see more of that. But I have another poll, just again thinking about that definition of high quality teaching and learning. So here's a poll from Alavan to set up for you. Does your LMS enable active social and applied learning to take place? Okay, so most of you, oh, it's not quite finished yet. I think a follow-up question would be, does your, you know, does your LMS allow this to take place? But is that actually what's happening, or is it being used as just a folder to store materials? You know, which is what a lot of people tend to use. So I've got 10. Okay, I'll end the poll and see. going to deal with this question a little bit more in detail in a little bit of time, but here's a direct question to you to generate a bit of discussion again. How does the LMS help teachers meet individual student needs? So that phrase, individual student needs, will come into any sort of evaluation of teaching and learning and any sort of inspection process. How is your LMS helping that, or not, as the case may be? Would anyone like to contribute to that? Can't see any hands.
Robert, I think we should mention if they don't participate, we have to charge them. We got to ask for their credit cards.
Okay, Kelsey, thank you, Kelsey.
Okay, no problem. I don't think the system itself helps the teachers meet individual student needs. I think that's a philosophy of teaching that teachers have to have, and whether it's in the class or online or however you're teaching, you have to put that into your teaching. It's not something that, I mean, I don't see how our learning management system supports that in any way, actually. Even if I'm talking about, we're mostly using like Teams or Edmodo, Class Dojo, that kind of stuff, some Google Classroom. But to be honest, it's a teacher philosophy. The teacher can make it work in her own way, depending on what she does or doesn't do. And I've seen that the teachers that do address individual student needs in the classroom manage to do it no matter what you're talking about. And the ones that are not really addressing them in the classroom or on a daily basis, they struggle to do that digitally. The difference being that I now have the option of saying, prepare one teacher who is excellent at math, or making sure that students have a basic understanding of phonics. I can ask them to address any students with difficulties digitally in other classrooms. So it's kind of opened up another idea of, yes, you have your classroom teacher, but this is a specialist in phonics or math or whatever that will address individual student needs and in an easier way than what the class teacher can maybe do. But it's an ability that the teachers possess or don't possess. And to me, the management system itself hasn't really impacted their ability to do so.
Is that because of, I mean, obviously, yeah, the management system doesn't replace the teacher's knowledge and know-how, but something like, let's say, Canvas, for example, you can use Canvas to set up variety of different tasks for the students, which they then can choose to take, so that the tasks become more individualized, for example, and that's just one.
But again, that really comes down to the
it.
teacher setting up her ability to identify and do that. So yes, of course they can do that, and many do, and the learning management system doesn't stop them or block them or hinder them from doing that. But the idea is that some who are not really more able, they just don't. But now what as I said, the opportunity has opened up for me to identify those that are able to set up more individualized tasks, and then share that across the platform with other learners, not just those in their class. So that, in a way, has helped through the learning management system.
Thank you. Madhu, did you want to contribute something?
Yes, I do want to say that that is inclusive education is a real challenge, and there are gifted students or who complete early, or for that matter, those accommodations which are required for special needs students. I mean, they are just not there. And there is less of awareness or understanding also to meet the different learning needs.
Thank you.
So that is not met, yeah.
We're going to discuss that in a little bit more detail in a minute, actually. So we'll come back to individual student needs because it's so important. Let's move on to, okay, let's just think about, again, talk about teaching strategies. And I'm sure you know the terms sort of synchronous learning and asynchronous learning. But it does change the approach to teaching. So with synchronous learning, in a way, you can sort of imitate more traditional teaching online, but with asynchronous learning content, by flipping the classroom, by using the teacher as a facilitator, or perhaps using the Zoom sessions as discussion sessions, not as face-to-face teaching sessions, it can very much change the way, well, it can change the approach. So again, I don't know what sort of methodology you've used in your schools, but within your own context, what are the pros and cons of synchronous and asynchronous strategies within your specific context? If anyone's got anything to share there. Yasmina? I'm just unmute you.
Hello?
No. Okay. Hello, Yasmina.
Hello, good morning. Yes, I was trying to participate, but unfortunately my connection is not really working well now. But I wanted to answer the question for language management system. As a preschool, we are using Fusion. So Fusion allows us to upload recording lesson, homework, and also have live sessions. But the challenge is with the preschool students or KG students, it's very difficult to maintain the attention or to attract the students, the small ones. Plus that mainly they are dependent on their parents. They have to have someone to sit with them and instruct them what exactly they have to do. So this is our challenge with having some students who are learning online or having blended learning and have some live session, that it's very challenging to keep the students' attention and to let them depend on themselves to attend the sessions. Thank you.
Yeah, I think early years is a very particular age group where it's extremely challenging to sort of expecting any independence is probably not really realistic. I think in early years the learning management system is probably not necessarily there as a teaching tool, but more as a way to help parents or inform parents about the sort of things that you're doing. I think, I'm a primary specialist, but for me, really from 7 upwards, you can start, I think, to use one-to-one devices and learning management systems to start to effectively teach children, but be below that age, I think it's very, very tricky to do that. Okay, I will just because of time. Let's move on. But this is again back. We talked a bit about this, but along with the definition of teaching and learning, if your school is either evaluating, or hopefully your school is evaluating how successful you are, but certainly from an inspection point of view or an evaluation point of view, meeting student needs, individual student needs is the key. And I'm just wondering, these issues, they're always issues in a face-to-face environment, but they're equally valid online. Are your students challenged? Is differentiation embedded into process? I've just used Carol Tomlinson's sort of definition of differentiation with those 4 areas. How are your English as a second language learners catered for? In high experience, you need to have a language-rich environment. You know, lots of language, lots of discussion. How is that happening in a blended environment? And then inclusion, which is a huge issue. I'm sure some students will have benefited from online learning, but others would have found it incredibly challenging. I'm just wondering if you had any particularly, well, maybe do you have any success stories that you can share with us, because these are all quite tricky areas. Can't see any success stories. Do you have any really any major worries about some of these areas, or is it part of the discussion in your schools at the moment?
The success, can I speak for a minute? I mean, I just wanted to share.
Yeah, please do.
That if you can call it a success story, the really shy introvert ones feel more comfortable, you know, when they are in online class. So they, and I found that they are gradually grow in confidence, you know.
Thank you. I'm just a different question. Is your school evaluating this at the moment? I mean, how much time is a lot of time being devoted to this, or is it just too early? Are there just too many technical issues happening, or too many health and safety issues happening, or is this still a really important element of what's happening at the moment? Marianne?
Regarding differentiation, it was kind of already in place with the face-to-face classes. What I found is that in order for the teachers to keep the students engaged, they're doing an incredible amount of work to increase the level of differentiation, because obviously, you know, they've got all the children at the same time. They're not walking around seeing different ones to see what they're doing. And so, I don't know, I feel as if the amount of time for a lesson needs to be increased in order for them to do all that they need to do to make sure that they do have that quality learning and that they are meeting the individual needs. I think it was interesting that the lady before me said that the quiet students were more willing to get involved. I think that's just swings and roundabouts, really. Some of them are and some of them aren't. But yeah, it is difficult to meet individual needs, but the teachers are working hard to do that. And there is some success in it. There's definitely some success in it, and there are definitely still challenges.
Yeah, it's a huge. I mean, it's a huge challenge for teachers at the moment to do this. I wonder, you know, again, if there are different approaches. If you again going back to teaching and then going back to some of these strategies, if the teachers were using a few more asynchronous approaches, it might be a little bit easier to do that. If you're focusing on face-to-face online learning, I think it's extremely challenging to meet individual needs. But that's just an opinion of mine.
Can I just add to that?
Yeah.
Okay, so when the teachers are doing the face-to-face, although I have to stress that I'm mainly dealing with girls, so they're not on camera, but they're having their you know, live lessons. What the teachers are doing is they're introducing, as they would in class, spending minimal amount of time introducing the tasks or the lesson. Then there's tasks that students work on together or individually, for example, through Google Classroom. And then they have times in which they then have to feed back. So it is interactive, but I think that, and then they may have a video to watch for a few minutes and things like that. But it's just challenging because getting around 20 or 25 students, when you can't even see them to know, you know, you're relying on them to type in what they're doing. That's the main challenge. And this is why I was saying it's, you know, it's difficult, but because of the input of the social work, we can see who's actually contributing and who's not, and then follow up with them afterwards if they're not.
I'll just move back to this idea of synchronous learning and asynchronous learning, and I'm just wondering, in terms of pressures for school, if the pressure is to deliver 5 or 6 hours of face-to-face learning like this, or if schools, if any of your schools have taken a different approach, and if they've changed the online day so that there is less, what is a mixture or a blend of this face-to-face and then time when the students are working independently, if any schools have tried that, or if it's been just not successful, or perhaps there's been too much pressure from parents that they want to have this face-to-face teaching. Does anybody get anything to add on that? Have you tried different things? Who's got their hand? Madhu, Ms. Sharma?
Yeah, actually, one could have assessments generally. I mean, I'll say as my thoughts come to me. Assessments generally or evaluations are a challenge to have high quality assessments and evaluation procedures. Independent learning, again, there is this thing of having project-based learning or giving different things which are being explored. Yeah, but these are some of the things which come to my mind, because you have multiple choice questions or you have short answer questions, and this is one area which needs to be developed, you know, to cater to the all needs.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we come to our last poll and our last slide in this discussion. It gets to do with reflection and self-evaluation. Those of you who are used to sort of school inspections or school evaluations will know that one of the first things that a team does is to send out questionnaires to parents, to staff, to give surveys about all aspects of the school. I'm just wondering if your school has done this with in the focus of blended online learning. You know, have you been surveying your parents to see how they feel? Have you been surveying your students to see how they feel about this process, and also staff? You know, that trinity. Right. Okay, that's again from the point of view of anyone outside evaluating your school. It's the first thing that they would do, but as a school, if you haven't done this, then it's very, very hard to know where your benchmark is and what you need to do to improve. I've just got 4 answers, so there's still no.
Robert, I'm actually waiting for the questionnaire from my school where my children are going to.
Okay.
Haven't received yet.
So still, is anybody else? Okay, 1, yes. That's.
Feel free to answer.
I could have separated the question into 3.
Your names don't appear on the poll, so you're free to answer.
I think there's a lot of need for communication to get feedback from students and parents, and you know, even from teachers. I mean, how well they are coping in these different times. But there are not enough surveys related to that.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be not so much. It's. I mean, obviously, from a financial point of view, if your school is a private school and you haven't got this information from parents, then that could be a problem, because obviously if they're not happy and you don't know about it and they leave, that could result in quite well, has quite severe sort of financial implications for the school. But yeah, as I said, you know, when you go into schools and evaluate any part of the school, particularly teaching and learning, you will always you'll always send a survey out, and the survey will go to all members of the school. And if I was on a school visit, I would have meetings with parents, with the different layers of staff, senior leadership and not, and also the students. And that's the way, when you're evaluating a school, that's how you gather evidence, or that's how you triangulate your evidence. You need all three different, you need all three opinions, really. Without that information, it's very, very hard, I think, to move forward. And I don't think any of those different cohorts are more important than the other. Obviously, the parents, the ones may be paying fees, so financially you need to know what the parents think about what you're doing. But students are, you know, they're equally important. That you know, they will be very honest and tell you not just how they're feeling about their education, but probably you know, give tips about how it could be improved for them. So I don't know what the final results of the poll were, but great, yeah. So okay, it's got a little bit better. So okay, well, the hour is almost up. I don't know if anyone has got any final questions or any final thoughts on the session. I can't see any hands up. In that case, I won't leave you with the last one. I'll leave you with this slide, because I think it is the most important one. Oh, Dr. Sani.
Yeah, just my last point. We're speaking about schools. I think a lot of it also depends on the relationship between the management and the teachers. It needs to be said, because obviously, as some of the ladies have said before, you know, teachers have their individual styles, and some of them are very good and some of them are not. Some schools are willing to, you know, invest in training, but that needs to be high quality training too, you know, to make sure that it fits their needs and not just it sounds good and that's what we're doing. And I've seen a lot of that as well. You know, they've taken on board lots of different ideas without really fully understanding how to implement them, so they're not actually effective. And so the quality of the student learning and teaching is diminished. So, you know, it's important for the schools, for the leadership, to really take on board what's happening, not just to, you know, praise what's happening without knowing whether it's good or not. So the poll, I wasn't able to contribute to the poll because my internet went off, but the poll was really important to know how the parents felt, how the students felt, and even how the teachers felt about how the system is working. So that's just what I wanted to contribute at the end.
Yeah, thank you. I know from sort of friends and colleagues of mine who are teaching, who are under a huge amount of pressure when they're in school now, because suddenly they, with these individual bubbles, they're having to get to work earlier, they leave later, and they don't have any breaks because they're with the students the whole time. So there's quite a lot of demands being asked of teachers at present, without necessarily the space being allowed to implement changes. Whenever you implement a change in a school, you need to create some space for that change to be effective. But again, unless you have surveyed staff and students, unless you've got information, if you don't have that information, it's quite hard to to know to know what you need to do. If your school hasn't got a clear definition of teaching and learning, again, it's very hard to make any sort of judgments on your staff or how well they're doing, or how well the students are doing. Yeah, and that's sort of my final point, really. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for contributing to the discussion. It's very interesting, and best of luck. Stay safe and well, and sane, and look forward maybe to speaking to you in the future. Malavan, do you want to just finish a final few words?
Definitely. Thank you very much. Thank you for joining this discussion. Please be in touch with us. There are a lot of other programs that we have planned. And if you can, just for those who require certificates for their IPDs or CPDs, please email me the name that you like on your certificate. So along with your soft copy of the certificate, I can send you the link for today's recording as well. Thank you very much. Stay safe. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Bye. Nice to meet you. Bye-bye.